All right, so we are recording. So welcome everybody. Like I said, this session is being recorded, so if you want to review it later, you can. Um, Today we have Mr. Rob Beck and Mrs. Katie McGuire, who are from WVU Procurement. So Rob is the director of procurement, purchase cards, and the mail system within the university. Had to remember the mail system that falls under you. Or did they move that somewhere else already?
I got the mailroom. Still can't figure it out, but they report to me.
Yes. And Katie is a category analyst who you specialize in lab equipment, right? At least that's what I remember.
Yes,
All right.
the lab supply category.
Lab supply. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Rob, who's going to talk about a little bit about resumes and then start talking about this category analysis project. And then Katie's going to take over and show you guys some functions within Microsoft Excel, which are going to be extremely helpful, such as VLOOKUP and some other functions it's extremely helpful when you're trying to sort through data. So Rob, go ahead and take it away.
Yep. So how do I share my screen?
If you go down, there's that little purple double arrow in the lower right. It says Open Collaborate Panel, and then there's a square with a arrow coming out of it.
Yeah, that's the one I didn't know what it was. Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
So, all right, excellent.
Share camera.
You might want to do share application and pick PowerPoint or whichever one it is.
Okay. Go back. All right, now I can't figure out how to turn it off, Jeremy.
I believe there's a little X button somewhere on the screen.
Okay, that one. Let me try this again. No, that's not working. I X'd out and come back. Share application screen. Okay, let me do this. And let me do application window. So guys, can you see my screen?
I got it on my end. It's your presenter mode.
Okay, good.
That's
So,
your side of presenter mode.
Okay. What does that mean?
So you have your current slide and your next slide coming up with your notes.
Let me try this again. I'm not getting the right screen. It should be this one. How about now? There we go.
Yep, that's what I see.
Okay. So thank you. And again, I'm Rob Beck. I'm the Director of Procurement at WVU. So I'm responsible for basically everything this university buys, from the laptop I'm talking to you all through to the new video display boards that they're putting up at the Coliseum and the stadium as we speak, and just everything in between. Katie, like Dr. Roberts said, is a category analyst in the lab supply space, so she's responsible for, I'll tell you what comes to mind first is all the gases we use in our labs, because that's an issue right now for us, but also just anything they would use within a laboratory. And this is, I believe, my 7th or 8th semester speaking to this class. Normally, we have a partner called Denali out of Pittsburgh that's a consulting firm in the sourcing and procurement space. And they talk to you about several things throughout the course of the semester. And I don't believe they're working with us this semester, but even if they were, they always talked about resume, best practices, and professionalism last. And I think that's something you guys need up front. So I plagiarized a few of their slides, and I'm going to talk to you about these real quickly up front. So some best practices with resumes is, if you don't have one, get one started now. It's never too early, right? I imagine a lot of you are going to be looking for internships and other opportunities either during the year or next summer. So get one started. And some best tips when you're doing it. So make sure that your resume is relevant to the job you're applying for, right? You don't want to apply to a procurement job and not have any relevant procurement experience on there. Make sure you highlight your strengths, and you can have multiple resumes, right? So as you move through kind of the curriculum you have for global supply chain management, procurement is just a piece of that. There's also distribution, there's warehousing. If you have experience as you're going for your first job, or you really don't know what you want that job to be, create one that highlights each. Don't try to cram it all into one resume. Make sure your resume is formatted, right? Because me, as somebody that reviews resumes kind of frequently, really the first thing you do is you see what it looks like when you open it up, right? And if it doesn't look professional, if it doesn't look organized, it's going to turn somebody off. I won't. I'll read it. I promise you that. But a lot of people will say, I don't have the time, and they'll delete it. So make sure your resume is formatted, make sure it looks professional, make sure it looks good to the eye. And that's outside of the content, which we'll talk about in a minute. But when you're preparing your resume, make sure you fix all spelling and grammar issues. Make sure it reads right. Make sure there's no typos in there. Don't rely on spell check in Microsoft Word, for instance. Read it yourself. Get other eyes on it. Make sure there's no mistakes in it. I think the best way you can describe a resume is it's you on a piece of paper, right? So you want to make sure that piece of paper is reflecting you, and not just what you've done and accomplished, but your attention to detail by not having mistakes and typos on there, by your professionalism, which reflects back on the format. Use a consistent text throughout the document. One little key that I always use is all my past jobs I do in a past tense, but my current job, I will use present tense. And I've done that ever since I've started my resume years ago. With spacing, be consistent, right? We say that a resume should be a page, especially for guys in your situation, but don't have huge gaps in it to create one page, right? Make sure the spacing is consistent. You don't have two paragraphs next to each other, then 5 spaces down another. This seems intuitive, but I've seen it not. So make sure you have a chronological flow to what you present on your resume in the specific groups, right? So when you're going over your employment history, the top should be your current or most recent position. Then go back in time. Make sure the dates are accurate. Don't lump school in with your professional. So you'll have another space for education, right? If you're getting a master's, have that first, then your undergrad. Even with clubs and stuff like that. If there are gaps, and you're not going to hit this yet, but if there are gaps in your resume, just be prepared to explain them, right? One, for instance, could be, well, if you look down to my education, I took a year off work to go back and get my master's degree, right? Be prepared to explain that, because that an interviewer will immediately, that will draw their eye and they will question that. And do your best. And speaking from somebody in procurement, absolutely, do your best to try to quantify your accomplishments, right? Try to put a number on them, that you saved, in a procurement world, right? You saved X amount of dollars or X% on something. It's difficult to do, but as you think through it, you can come up with ways to do that. So some social media best practices, right? And this is a relatively new thing, but it's important. And as a matter of fact, I just came across an example I'll talk to you about in a minute. But think about what you feel is appropriate for Facebook and LinkedIn. Specifically LinkedIn, be careful, because that is a professional social media outlet. So there shouldn't be pictures of you drinking beer doing a keg stand on LinkedIn, but I would consider that on Instagram and Facebook as well. Be cognizant about what you're posting, both the comments you make on other people's posts and the pictures you're putting out there. Companies now look at that. I came from Dick's Sporting Goods to West Virginia University, and at Dick's Sporting Goods, we had social media folks in our HR department, our human resources department, that looked at your profiles, right? In this hyper-partisan time, I don't care what side you're on, be cognizant of what you're posting, because you could turn somebody off. I'm a registered voter and I'm registered to a party, but I am very careful not to put things out there that denigrates the other side. So just be careful. Assume anyone can see your profile, because they can. It's a difficult one, but watch what you're being tagged in. And then lastly, I would say, sell yourself. Your LinkedIn profile is your digital resume. So sell yourself on that. And by the way, guys, I'll forget later on. So as I'm thinking it now, please feel free. I encourage you to reach out and connect with Katie and I on LinkedIn. Between us, we know a lot of people, and anybody that can recognize you, anything that you see, anything that we can do to help you with an internship or a job further down the line, we're more than happy to do. But start building your connections now on LinkedIn. And like it says at the bottom, right? Social media is a great way to network and market yourself if you use it correctly. If you don't, it can be somewhat detrimental to you. Last slide we have on this is just interview preparation, right? One thing I like to tell everybody when we talk about interview preparation is, remember, you're interviewing the company as well. They're interviewing you for a role, but you're interviewing them to find out if this is somewhere I want to work. So with that being said, do your research before an interview, right? Know the company, know what they do. Go on their website, take away as much as you can. Look for recent news articles on them. Be prepared to talk about those. And also fully understand the role that you're being considered for, right? Have a good idea of what those requirements are and be prepared to talk to them. If you see requires excellent Excel skills, be prepared to talk about what you can do and have done in Excel. Try to prepare questions for the interview team in advance, right? Because it makes you look like you're interested in them. I often tell people, when I'm interviewing candidates, if you're sitting in the room with me and I'm talking to you and I'm asking you questions, I know you can do the job. That's not my concern anymore. I'm now looking for the best fit with my organization as a whole, right? The WVU culture. And then secondly, how you can fit in and be a piece of my team. You're still going to have to talk through, some technical stuff, and we'll show that on the next slide. But be prepared to talk about yourself and be prepared to ask that company questions. I mean, you see the examples. I won't read them all to you, but try to get a feel for their management style. Try to understand what their office environment and culture is about. Even ask, what's a day in the life like for this position? And it's not out of bounds. Most organizations, I used to say companies, but WVU is not a company. Most organizations will provide you in advance with who you will be meeting with. It's not out of bounds for you to go out and look at them on LinkedIn, learn what you can about them, and even ask them questions, right? It can be, say it's a pit grad, right? It can be a joking question about the rivalry for WVU and between WVU and Pitt. I wouldn't say things like Pitt or something like that, but you can come up with, good questions about that. It creates kind of a familiarity during the interview that'll only work to your benefit. And then practice, right? Prepare your questions in advance. Prepare answers for anticipated questions in advance. And there's going to be some that everybody's going to ask. So be prepared. Sit in front of a mirror and talk through those, imagine those questions and talk through those answers. If you don't know what an elevator pitch is, and this is kind of outside of an interview, but if you don't know what an elevator pitch is, research it and develop one. But in short, an elevator pitch is about a 30-second sales pitch for yourself. So, the thought process behind it is you run into the CEO or chief financial officer or director of procurement for a company you're interested in an elevator, and you've got 30 seconds to try to sell yourself to them. And then again, watch your body posture, your word selection, and your language, right? Avoid slang. Definitely don't swear, but avoid slang. Avoid words like cool, stuff like that would normally just flow out normal. Be as professional as possible. And your body posture, right? You want to show, you want to be sitting up straight. You want to show an open body posture. Don't cross your arms. Put your hands on the table in front of you, or always bring something to write on and have a pen ready to take notes. But just avoid crossing your arms, avoid hands on your hips. Don't slouch. Your body posture shows more than you think about your interest in the position. And then here's some traditional interview questions, right? One you're always going to get is, walk me through your resume, right? So prepare to talk through what you've done, even if that's just your college career. Talk through that and projects you've done and how they pertain to the position you're interviewing for. Give an example, and a lot of organizations are trending towards these types of questions. Give an example of any situation. What did you do and what was the outcome, right? Be prepared to, the one here is give an example where you worked in a team. What was the outcome? But how did you get there also? How do you keep yourself organized? A lot of folks are going to ask you that. A lot of people want to see that you are organized and you won't let things slip. And be prepared. question 4 here is a good example. Be prepared to be asked a question where the interviewer is looking for you to turn a negative into a positive, right? And that's what you want to do. So don't just give an example of a failed project, right? How did you turn that around? And that's important. And give an example of how you had to adapt to a changing process, right? Because a lot of folks are looking for that. I know I am. So I've been, by and large, since about 1992, change management has been a big part of what I've done, even as I've switched from engineering into procurement. And the last thing I would say is a little tip for all of these questions, and trust me, guys, this works, is think of 1 or 2 situations where you've done something really good, whether that be at a job, on a class project, something like that, and just learn how to talk to that, practice that, and you will be shocked that you can apply 1, 2, 3 of those situations into pretty much every question here except for number 1. And again, if you practice those, if you know those, you can switch them up and you can very easily apply those to most questions you will get asked. And don't be afraid to say, oh, going back to my class project my junior year, and answer a second question with that same situation. Nobody will look upon that negatively. Any questions around interviewing, resumes, social media? Okay, we will switch to the topic of the day, which is data. So I'm going to start this off and walk you through it, and then we're going to switch over to Katie for some exercises and data manipulation exercises and how she actually does it. So Katie spends a lot of her time in data. So in procurement in particular, data is very important. It's something I like to think of our organization as a data-driven organization. So what we'll cover is what is data, why it's important, a presentation that we would put in front of somebody, have put in front of somebody. Then Katie will talk about data sources and do some exercises. And lastly, it's listed on here as exercise, but it's really a project that we're going to give to you guys. So what is data? Data, guys, is really any number of things, right? So again, I'm talking about this from a procurement perspective, but this goes across the board, right? All of this is examples of data, regardless of your profession. So product data, right? Requirements. A car has to have a top speed of 120 miles per hour, right? That's what we're building towards. Specifications, and there's all kind of specs around, you name it, anything. So right now we're in the business of buying as much hand sanitizer and disinfectant as we can. And when we talk about specifications for disinfectant, it must kill the coronavirus in 2 minutes or less, and it must be FDA approved. I mean, those are examples of specifications. Quantities, and what I mean by quantities in the product data realm is really, a car has 4 tires. So 1 unit, which would be a car, would have 4 tires and a desired price, right? So oftentimes at the exporting goods, you go in and you see name brand treadmills. Well, then you see treadmills you don't really necessarily recognize the name, and those are Dick's Sporting Goods treadmills. That's our private brand, or their private brand. What they do when they go out for an RFP on those is they say the price point for this particular treadmill has to be $999.99. And then our suppliers would come back to us with, all right, for that price point, this is what we can provide, and this is what the price you would pay us would be. Historic information, and that's very important, right? So how much have you purchased in the past? What have you paid in the past? And what vendors did you use? And lastly, business and legal, right? So the tail end of our purchase is we negotiate our terms and conditions. So that could be payment in net 30. That can be clauses around indemnification and limitation of liability. That's how long the contract's going to last. That's all those things piled together. So why is data important? Why is it important enough that we're having this conversation? Well, purchasing isn't data driven, but strategic sourcing, which is a big part of what we do, is data driven. And data is basically the base on what we build everything we do on. Our decisions are data driven. So this kind of walks you through this slide. Most of the steps in our strategic sourcing process, and so you can understand where data impacts each of those, right? So first, we need to understand where we are, right? I can't save you money unless I know what we spend today. Otherwise, it's what they call a spot buy. It's not strategic sourcing. But it's also understanding where we need to go, right? And this is a good example of, I'm teaching project management this semester, and how do you select a project? If we're driving towards maximum savings, we might let a couple RFPs go in order to focus on one that's really going to drive us to our savings goal, right? Again, building on that is we develop, and it's called a category plan. We develop a roadmap to get there. So, an overall category strategy, and, I oversee all the category strategies. And right now, poor Katie is responsible for the strategy for lab equipment. So, we look at all of those. We look at the biggest opportunities. So we focus first on areas where we might have 70 vendors providing the same product or service, or where we're spending a lot of money, because the more you spend, it might be a smaller savings percentage, but it's a higher savings dollar. Communicating what we want. So when we prepare a request for proposal or an RFP, it's incumbent upon us to tell potential vendors exactly what we want. The more exact and precise we can be with that, with what we give them, the better pricing that they can give us back, right? So we try to take out all questions, all areas where they might have to make an assumption and take a risk, because when they take a risk, our price goes up. And it also helps in negotiating strategies when we're sitting across the table from a vendor. We need to compare results, right? We need to compare results in such a way that it's apples to apples, so we can make a knowledgeable decision. And lastly, it helps us manage our vendors, right? So to score, pardon me, our larger, more partner type vendors, we like to be able to scorecard them and tell them how they're doing, and what they can do better to help us. Well, to do that, right, we need data. We need pricing data. Are they consistently meeting the pricing we have in our contract? Are they consistently delivering on time? Is quality there? That's all data that we need to collect in order to scorecard our vendors. So when you're presenting data, right, and pardon me, out of college, regardless of what you guys are doing, a lot of that is going to be presenting data. And I think the biggest thing around that is know your audience, right? How much and what data do you show? How much detail do you show it in, right? You're not going to show the same sets of slides to the CEO that you would show to an engineer that maybe you're getting parts for a car for. So know how in depth you need to go. And how do you present the data, right? If it's an engineer, they might want to see your backup. They might want to see table upon table. If it's someone higher level, maybe you're just showing a graph or a chart. Really tell your story and have that pop, that bang. But let the data speak, right? When I, as your audience, am looking at that graph, I'm already seeing the numbers, right? I'm seeing the data speaking to me. What you want to do now is kind of provide your interpretation of the data and your opinions about it. I am going to show you a sample of this right now. And I did not have this one open yet, so give me one sec. So this is an example that actually somebody that graduated from your program several years ago actually presented to one of our internal clients, who is actually the VP of University Relations around print. So you can see first, she gave an overview and just talked to what you're about to see next. And basically told the story of how the print category looks today. But then she jumped in and really showed graphically what this looks like. We didn't know, for instance, who Sharon would be bringing to the meeting, so we decided to show both a chart that pops and the data behind it. And then some of the smaller stuff as well. But this really told the story of where we need to focus, and that was on organization, because you see so much other as well. You look at the spend by vendor, right? And literally one area to truly focus on, and I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but they have started losing a bit of business. And then we looked at, we call it vendors and spenders, right? So we looked at where we're buying stuff from, but we also looked at who's buying it. And truly, right, when you talk about who's buying the most, it's who you would expect. It's admissions. And then we kind of presented out what the opportunity was, and lastly, we gave the risks and challenges, and then a plan to try to get there. But really, and it had the right effect, right? Is we talked through how we saw the category, then we showed graphs that basically confirmed what we told them and popped to them. And then finally, we made our recommendations. We didn't move forward with all of this, but we moved forward with a good bit. Jeremy, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Katie. Katie, if you want to talk through the slides, and then you can share, I'll switch for you, and then you can share your screen for the exercise. That might be a good way to approach.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay. So do you want to just click through this one, Rob, until we get to Excel, or?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have two sets of reports we can pull to get spend data. So all these examples Rob has shown you, they require data to get to that point of having a strategy. So we have spend radar, and then we also can do exports through our Mountaineer Marketplace system. Mountaineer Marketplace is where users place their requisitions, which then go through workflow approvals. They go to an expert business office, they go to their supervisor, and then eventually it comes to procurement for approval, and it creates the purchase order that then goes to the supplier. Spend radar compiles that data, but it's not as detailed to the line item, but you're able to see a broader overview through spend radar. So you want to know where your data is coming from and its capabilities. So we know that spend radar is a broader view and Mountaineer Marketplace is a more narrow view. So you can adjust the spend reports you pull based on where you pull them from. Okay. The first one is the way you can do data reports is you want to do data cleansing. So you want to make sure that when you pull the reports, you don't just compile that, turn it into a graph, and send it off to management. You really need to cleanse the data to make sure that it's accurate. You really want to know what you're looking for. If it's your category, such as if it's something in the life science lab supply category, I already have a feel of what it should look like. I know if there's a huge outlier from working with it for so long that you can look at that and say, okay, something's not right in the data. Let's go back and make sure the cleansing was correct. So in this case, one of the first examples of data cleansing would be to do redundant data. You might pull something and the company name should be Microsoft or Apple, but as you can see on column B, their short names are many different vendors. It will show up as many different vendors. If you were to use column B and create a graph, Microsoft would be broken up into 10 different vendors, Apple into 2, and we wouldn't see the data for the true Microsoft. So the way to clean this data, there's two ways. You can either create a filter. You can filter on company name and then change everything in the short name to Microsoft Corporation, looks like what it should be. And then same with Apple. Another way is to find and replace. So you can find everything that is under Microsoft and switch it all over to the short name. Or you can omit column B completely. Maybe you only need to use column A and just make sure that it's consistent, that it's only Microsoft, there's not spelling errors or anything that's shortened. Okay. Let's see, so the number stored as text. So this one, you might see that little green triangle in the corner. The reason that we want to update that, you want to convert it to number, because if you use that in any kind of formula, it won't work. So when you see this, you want to go ahead, highlight the entire column, and click Convert to Number. So that's another way to cleanse the data, and it's pretty simple. Okay. The next one is if you're transforming non-numerical values over to numbers. So if you have a list of people, you have their gender, and you want to change that to either 0 and 1s so that it's not actually letters or names, you can do that with the end function. You can also do that with the if function. And you can also do, when I have a large amount of data, I just do the find and replace function. So the Control F, and then instead of find, go to the replace tab, and then you can switch everything that was an M over to a 0, everything that was an F over to a 1. We'll go through that on one of these examples on the Excel sheet. And I believe this is the last one. It is data cleansing. So this is the things to look for. So when you export that report out of whatever system you're using, you want to look for typos, blanks, make sure there's uniqueness if there needs to be. The first one is the ID. If the ID is supposed to be unique to one value, one person can only have a unique ID like your 700 number. There's no way that Alex and Peter would have the same ID number. So off the bat, that's incorrect. So that was likely a typo or some kind of export error that could be fixed. The next one is you want to make sure the formats are correct. if you're using a date per se, the birthday, this format is not in the same date range as all the others in the column. The next one's gender. So in that case, in this example, we're looking for M or F, and there's an A. So that's invalid because we're looking for one of two answers, and that's going to throw a curveball. The next one is the attribute dependencies. If there's a teacher, there's going to be students. There can't be students without a teacher. So if you look at column row 9, it has 0 for teacher, but 5 for students. So we know that's incorrect because there will not be students without a teacher. So that will need corrected and cleansed. The next one is there could be a misspelling. So we clearly can tell that that last row was supposed to be Italy. They spelled it incorrectly, and now it will not work when you're doing graphs, when you're doing pivot tables, or doing any other kind of comparison. You want to look for any missing values. You can do this by doing the filter function and looking for any blanks. You want to look at any misfielded values. So we already asked for country. Italy should not be the city as well. Okay, so there's a few different tools that we can use during data analysis. One thing I use a lot is the VLOOKUP function. We use this, for example, when Rob mentioned compressed gases is something that's on the front of our mind right now. Using someone's unique account number, maybe I get a list of the account numbers, and in another file I have account number and username nice and paired together, but the file that the supplier sent is just account number. I can do a VLOOKUP to now populate in their file the user's name next to that account number, which makes it much easier. We also use VLOOKUPs when we're doing maybe some bids or pricing comparisons. We can pull up the pricing and the catalog numbers from previous ones to get a baseline. The next one's conditional formatting. We'll go over that as well. We'll go over pivot tables, and we'll go over graphs. I think there's one more tab. And then we use these tools to get to these methods. So these tools are used to find trends, to find any kind of categorization, benchmarking, and modeling. Okay. I think that's the last tab before I'll pull up the spreadsheet. That's the last slide. Let's see. I'm going to try to share my... Okay, yeah, do you want to get to this part after the examples, Rob? Okay, I'm pulling it up right now. Okay, can you all see my screen now instead of Rob's?
I can.
You can? Okay,
Yes.
good. Oh, I saw somebody raise their hand. Oops.
That would be
Okay.
you raising the hand.
Yeah, I just clicked the person. It was someone else that raised it. Okay. All right.
Well, if they have a question, they're more than welcome to speak up or use the chat if there's
Okay.
any questions.
Did anyone have any questions so far? All right. So what we'll do is if you have this file available, I highly recommend pulling this up and walking through it with me. If not, then I really think it would be beneficial to go through this recording and watch it again and try it out with these examples, because I can guarantee you will use whatever job you move forward with, you will use one of these in your future. So it's better just to try it out now while you have some steps in front of you. You can also, after this, ask any questions if there were any that stumped you. I'm happy to help. So we'll start walking through. The first one is VLOOKUP. So as I mentioned, VLOOKUP is used if you have, if you have a a unique number, such as a student number, or I told you in my example was an account number for a compressed gas supplier, and we want to know the student name. So we have a list over here of all of the account number, the student numbers, and the student names in their major. But we just want to quickly find out who this student number belongs to in their major. So we'll use the VLOOKUP function. Okay, so we're going to do it two ways. I'll do it the way where we type it in and the way where we pull up the formula. So I'm going to pull up the formula first. Okay. So the lookup value, you're going to have your box highlighted in the student name. I thought I heard. And the lookup value is going to be the 700 number over here. So we're going to click G5. Now the table array, this is going to be where is Excel going to look for this. In Excel, remember when you're doing VLOOKUP, Excel looks left to right and up to down. So you really want to start with the number you're looking for in column A if possible, and you're looking towards column C and you're looking down. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to highlight this whole section, and then we're going to press F4. That makes it an absolute reference. So some laptops don't let you press F4. I have my desktop up. So if that's the case, you can go in and manually type the signs in front of each letter. What this does is it fixes the reference point. So if we were to pull down and copy and paste this to all the other cells, once we get an answer, it will go down to A3, A4, and it won't hold steady at the top because it's looking from the top down. So this really fixes it. If you have an Excel error, this is likely the cause. The column index number, so what is the value we're looking for? We're looking for the student name. So that would be not column 1, but column 2. So you're not going to use A, B, C, you're going to use 1, 2, 3. So we're looking for column 2. We're looking for the student name. And then we want an exact match. I think for most cases you're going to use an exact match. So we're going to go ahead and put false. False is exact match. True is an approximate match. You're going to click OK. My computer's freezing. Okay. My laptop and my computer. Okay, I'm not sure why my computer is freezing. Okay, there we go. So the student name is Mike. And you can go ahead and you can copy this down because we did that absolute reference, the F4, or put the price signs in front of each of the columns and rows, it will hold steady. So now we have everybody's name associated with their number. So what I like to do, just to make sure I did it correctly, I always do a quick spot check. I'll check, let's see, is Don, yep, Don ends in 581, Don. So I just want to make sure that I did it correctly because even after doing it a bunch of times, you still could select the wrong thing. You want to make sure it pulls the information correctly. Okay. Then the next way we're going to do it is we're just going to type it manually. So we're going to do equal VLOOKUP, and we're looking for the major. So the lookup value, we're going to use the student number again, comma, the table array. We're going to go ahead and highlight the full table. This is the reference point. This is the information we're using to pull from. And we're going to go ahead and press F4 so those signs go in front of it and it fixes it. Again, if your laptop might do something weird, so you can manually type that afterwards. And then the column index number. So this time we're looking for the major. So column 1, 2, 3. So that would be column 3. And then false is an exact match. So false. So Mike's major is electrical engineering, and if we drag this down, we get everyone's. Everyone that's associated with these numbers, it has their major. So let's just again check. We'll check Don. Does Don do information systems? Yes, he does. Okay, so that one worked out well. Did anyone have any questions before we go on to the next one? Any questions at all? Checking the messages quick. Okay. Then we'll go on to sparklines and conditional formatting. So sparklines are a simple, condensed way to show information. This might be something you show management if they just have a quick question on the trends of, for example, how many pens are purchased throughout the year. We can go ahead and they want to see, let's say you know that your management is more of a graphics person rather than numbers. So we'll go ahead, we'll highlight, we're going to show that in column N. We will go to insert and see right here, sparklines. We're going to do a line for this one. So we're going to highlight, let's highlight pens from January to December and see it's a very simple condensed way to have just a little chart. We could also do this for, let's say they want to know what did the month of January look like, just in a quick graphic. We'll go to insert, we'll go to column. I'm going to go ahead and put my cursor down there. We'll go to column, we'll highlight the data range, and there is just a quick bar graph of this is what January looks like. It looks like we drop off about with light bulbs, socks, you know, they drop down there, but this is just a really quick graphic. Does anyone have any questions on how to do these? Okay, so we'll go ahead and we will delete these just to clear the screen, and we'll do some conditional formatting. Okay, conditional formatting. This is, you can make your own rules. You can go into more formatting rules than what's offered if you click that part. I like this one, format only unique or duplicate values. So in this case, if I have a large list of suppliers on an Excel file, and I'm not sure if the suppliers are all only written one time, maybe they're there multiple times, I can go ahead and do format only unique or duplicate values. So let's do format duplicate, and I want any duplicate value to show as, I'm going to have it fill as purple. You can pretty much do anything. You can have it bold, you can have a strike through. So I'm going to go ahead, I didn't select my data range. You want to select your data range first. Go to new rule. Go to unique or duplicate values, duplicate. I'm going to format it as purple if it's duplicate. So now that rule is set. And look, we have 2 pens on this list. So we already know that there was a duplicate somewhere. Maybe this was supposed to be ballpoint pen and this was supposed to be ink pen. So now I'll go back and I'll get that information and correct it. So we can go ahead and we can clear the values. You can clear from selected cells or the entire sheet. Another way you can use conditional formatting is, let's look at vacuums. Let's say that we want to see what were the top 3 months for vacuum purchases. So we'll go to new rule. We'll go to format only top or bottom ranked values. So you can do top 10%, but we don't have very many columns, so we'll do top 3 and not 3%, just the top 3. And we will make those green. So we'll apply that rule. And it looks like it actually picked 4, and the reason is because it looks like there was 74 twice. So it's going to show it to you both times because it's the same value. So it's like, yeah.
So Rob and myself are only seeing the VLOOKUP tab. I don't know if it's the signal coming out of your computer or Collaborate, but it's not showing the spark lines that you're working on right now.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. Let me try.
I thought it was just my hotspot, but apparently it's Rob also sees the same thing. Maybe try stopping the share and then sharing again.
Let's try that. Okay. Okay, thanks for pointing that out. Do you see it now?
I see the spark lines and conditional formatting
Okay.
tab. Pen, vacuum, notepad.
Okay,
Yeah, I
perfect.
do as well.
Good. Before I go on to the next one, I'll probably do that as well, just to make sure it shows. So thank you. Okay, then I'll really quick show the spark line. You already heard me talk through it, so just so you see what a spark line is. Okay, so right here over in the Insert tab, Spark Lines, we'll click Line. We'll highlight the section of data that we want to see. And there's your spark line. And then here's your spark line if you're doing a column. Same thing. Highlight that. So there you go. There's your quick, simple, condensed graphic. And then just to go over really quick, I already talked through it, but here was doing a duplicate value. We'll go to New Rule. We'll go to Duplicate Values, Duplicate, and we are going to make those purple if there's a duplicate. And then you see pen is duplicated twice. What I did up here for vacuum, we'll do again for PC case. So we are going to go to New Rule, and we're going to do top or bottom ranked values. We're going to do the top 3. So what are the top 3 months for the PC case? And we will make those green. And it looks like the top months are February, July, and September is when we purchased the most PC cases. Did anyone have any questions on conditional formatting or spark lines?
I hope it's just me, but I did not see you do the spark lines on my side or the conditional formatting. So, okay, Francesca was saying that she couldn't, and Devin said that he couldn't.
Yeah, me either. Sorry, I was talking on mute.
Okay, that's all right. So what I'm going to do is, because I know, the plan is 1 hour, but she walked through it at least verbally. I'm going to also supplement this later, to reinforce it, and I'll do a screen recording on my own and make a video for everybody to see, instead of going through it once again. And don't you just love computers?
Yes.
Oh, this is great, isn't it?
Yeah. So I will either find YouTube videos to share with the class, or I will do it myself and share it with the class. I probably will just find YouTube videos because, why reinvent the wheel?
Yeah.
So the pivot tables, I know, was another one you were going to get to, Katie, and I don't want you to go through all that work and the students not be able to see it. So I could do the spark lines, the conditional formatting, and the pivot tables, and send videos out to the students. So I wish it worked, because you're just so good at explaining all this.
Well, thank you. And I apologize that you guys couldn't see me doing it. It's definitely not as interesting watching someone just talk and looking at an Excel file. It's not working. So thanks for sticking with me through it. So
Well,
Mhm.
I just, everybody in class here should have spoke up. But I didn't speak up because I was on a hotspot and I thought that was my issue. But anyway.
Well, luckily the file that you all have, Even though you couldn't see me doing it, I recommend looking at each of the tabs because they're set up so that you can run those exercises. Because it's pretty hard to do if you're starting from a blank canvas. So they're in a good spot for you to play around with and try those formulas out yourself.
And I would say I 100% agree. And guys, these are data skills that most employers are not just looking for; they're expecting from young folks graduating from college. So I would take that seriously, and I would definitely practice and try to master these skills.
Yeah, definitely. I use VLOOKUP to bring your grades in from my educator into the eCampus. That's why it's critically important to have your student ID number inside of eCampus so that transition can happen seamlessly.
And I
My
think that's a
BCore
good.
360. Oh, go ahead, Rob.
I think that's a good segue into the project.
Yeah, yeah. So the project. Do you want to talk about it, Rob? Or
Yeah, I'll share my screen.
Okay.
So this is the project, and I'll describe it in a little bit of detail. So several years ago, back when I was in the procurement consulting field, prior to engaging with one of our customers, we would send a team of consultants in to a company and do what we call an opportunity assessment. So your assignment is an opportunity assessment. So what is that? What those folks would do is take 1 year of spend data, which we already have or are about to provide to you. They would go through it, they would cleanse it, and then they would start looking by vendor, by spend, by category, at all of that spend, and really come up with what we would call a handful of low-lying fruit projects, right? So opportunities. And then they would present those to various personnel at the potential client, right? So what I want you guys to do, and I think you're being broken up into teams, virtual teams, is take the spend file we gave you. That's an actual year's worth of WVU procurement spend. And it's back when I wanted to get you guys a more up-to-date file, but I just don't have it yet. We're still trying to iron it out and get things where they need to be. So you have an older file, but that's not an issue. Some of these things we might have already addressed that you come up with. But keep in mind, you're going to be presenting this to the CEO and executive board of your company that you're working for. You have 5 minutes to present, right? So you want graphs that pop, charts that pop. You want to be able to have somebody look at that and say, yes, we want to do that project, and you have our support on it. And again, at the end, I believe finals week or the week before finals, you guys would be really great if we could do it in person. The direction things are going right now, we're going to have to do a bit of a U-turn to make that happen. But you'll definitely, at the very least, be presenting to us to this virtually. No category is out of bounds. No idea is out of bounds. We know you're not sourcing and procurement professionals. This is more about how you analyze, look at, and present data than it is about coming up with clever, cutting-edge sourcing policies. So I don't want you all to get scared about presenting something that's not great value. What I want you to focus on is your data skills and your data presentation skills. Did I cover everything on that, Jeremy?
Yes, and it's intentionally, the instructions are intentionally vague. I mean,
Yep.
you have your guidelines, but we want to see what you come up with. So Katie and Rob will also be your judges. And because we're virtual, my goal this year was to have you guys submit a presentation and a video. So that the video can be made with free software. I don't care if you want to use the selfie camera on your phone to make your video. And then your team can stitch those together. It's very easy inside of some free video editing software. And that way, because we're distant, we can't see each other, and we don't have to have 10 teams do presentations, because that's going to turn into a 2-hour plus event, the way at least how the last 2 semesters went.
Yeah,
So,
right.
So you guys creating a video, let's say you put it on your Google Drive. I'll give more details when we get closer. And then providing a link that all of us can access. That way we can watch your videos and assign a grade. And hopefully, if the pattern holds, this class will be better than the previous class, which was better than the previous class. So hope you guys have a level that you guys are expected to reach, and I certainly do hope you guys reach it. So
Bar does keep going up.
Yep. So there is no ceiling in how great you guys can be. So do we have any questions? This project on the syllabus, you're going to have to turn in everything by November 22nd by 5 p.m. So there's plenty of time. There's no need to start freaking out about this, because there is plenty of time.
But don't wait till the last minute.
Exactly. And it's obvious if you wait to the last minute.
Yeah, it is.
So if you guys have questions right now, if you guys have any questions for Rob or Katie, that'd be this would be the time. No? Give a moment to see if someone's typing. Well, I'll go ahead, and if there's nothing else, I'll go ahead and stop the recording. I'll stay for a couple more minutes to answer any questions if you just don't want to ask them while the recording's going. And I will be sending out those YouTube videos later explaining the areas that Katie covered, since for whatever reason, it didn't transmit what she was actually doing, even though we could see the mouse moving around, which is a little weird, but technology is what it is. So.